There comes a moment in a woman's life when something breaks, but not in the way people expect. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. There are no tears, no slamming doors, no final goodbye. It happens quietly, almost invisibly. One morning, she just wakes up, and she's done explaining herself. She's done justifying why she feels too much, why she loves too deeply, why she pulled away, why she no longer answers messages that drain her or entertains people who misunderstand her. She no longer rearranges herself to fit the version of womanhood that makes others comfortable. This woman is dangerous, not because she's cruel, not because she seeks revenge, but because she's finally realized that her power was never in their approval. And that realization changes everything. Carl Jung once said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Most people never do. They shapeshift, they shrink, they polish their masks and call it a personality. But the woman who stops explaining herself, she stops hiding. She enters what Jung would call the process of individuation, becoming who she truly is, not what the world demanded her to be. And it terrifies people, because she used to play along. She used to make herself small. She used to smile when something hurt. She used to say, "It's fine," when it wasn't. She was easy to keep around, because she didn't take up too much space, because she made sure everyone else felt seen while remaining invisible to herself. But not anymore. Now she no longer waits for permission to speak, to leave, to rest, to dream. She no longer sees her boundaries as cruelty. She knows that soft does not mean weak, and silence does not mean surrender. She reclaims her no like it's sacred, and it is. This woman is not angry. She's awake, and that difference threatens everything built on the comfort of her submission. You see, when a woman stops explaining, she reclaims the energy she used to spend on being understood. She no longer needs to be liked to feel valid. She no longer bargains for belonging. She no longer carries the weight of someone else's inability to meet her where she is. And this shift, it's not an act of rebellion, it's an act of returning to herself, to the truth that's lived in her bones long before the world told her who she should be. And if you think this happens overnight, you've never been that woman. It begins slowly. The erosion of self-respect masked as compromise. The exhaustion from trying to fix what someone else keeps breaking. The ache of being celebrated for the version of you that pleases others but betrays your soul. She tries. God knows she tries. To stay soft, to stay kind, to explain, over and over, hoping that maybe this time someone will truly hear her. Not just her words, but her silence, her body language, her hesitations, the truth behind the mask. But they don't. And so, something inside her shifts, not in bitterness, but in clarity. She sees that her worth isn't a negotiation, that her intuition isn't paranoia, that her sensitivity isn't a flaw, it's insight, that her presence is not something to be earned by others, but a gift she chooses to give. Jung taught that the shadow, the part of us we suppress, is often projected onto others. And this is why people become uncomfortable when a woman claims her wholeness. They see in her what they've refused to face in themselves. Her self-respect exposes their manipulation. Her peace disturbs their chaos. Her clarity makes their games visible. They'll call her selfish, cold, difficult. But what they really mean is, I can't control you anymore. Because a woman who no longer explains herself is no longer available for emotional labor. She no longer carries the burden of making everyone else feel okay about her truth. She's no longer interested in shrinking so someone else can feel tall. And here's the secret no one talks about. This kind of woman doesn't become hard, she becomes whole. Wholeness is not the absence of softness. It's softness with a spine, compassion with boundaries, love without self-betrayal. She still feels everything, but she no longer bleeds for those who keep cutting her. This kind of woman walks into a room and doesn't need to announce her power. It's in her eyes, her calm, her refusal to engage in the performance of approval. She is not intimidating by design. She is only terrifying to those who built their self-worth on her silence. She speaks less now, but when she does, every word carries weight. Not because she's louder, but because she's rooted. She knows who she is, and she's no longer asking for validation. She's stopped explaining her distance, her standards, her solitude. She no longer entertains people who confuse access with entitlement. This shift is sacred, and it's earned. Because behind every dangerous woman was once a girl who tried, who gave more than she had, who explained herself until her throat ached, who said yes to things she hated just to keep the peace, who loved people who mistook her kindness for weakness. That girl died quietly. And in her place rose a woman who finally understood that peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the absence of self-abandonment. And that's what makes her dangerous, not to the world, but to every system, person, or pattern that fed off her confusion. She is no longer confused. She doesn't hate you. She simply sees you, without illusion, without fantasy, without the need to fix or be fixed. She knows now that her energy is sacred, that her presence is earned, that her love is not a prize for those who survive her tests, but a reflection of those who love her in her fullness, not her silence. This woman is rare, not because she's special, but because she survived herself, her conditioning, her pain, her patterns, her need to be needed. And that survival makes her radiant. It makes her magnetic. It makes her unstoppable. A woman who has stopped explaining herself is no longer acting from the persona. She has entered her archetypal core. Jung spoke at length about the power of archetypes, patterns of energy that live deep in the collective unconscious. And when a woman withdraws her energy from performance, from apology, from social roles designed to keep her small, she doesn't disappear. She transforms. She begins to embody something ancient. She might appear quieter than before, but don't mistake that for detachment. What you're seeing is presence. A woman who has come into alignment with herself doesn't need to speak to prove her clarity. Her energy speaks first. She may carry the essence of the wise woman, deep, still, mysterious, seeing through illusion, or the huntress, independent, self-possessed, fierce in her focus, or the dark mother, one who nurtures not with comfort, but with truth. These are not roles she puts on. These are energies she remembers, energies she returns to once she stops contorting herself to fit into what Jung would call the social mask. This shift doesn't just affect her. It disturbs the system around her, especially the men who have built identity through her reflection. A woman who no longer explains herself is no longer reactive. She doesn't argue to prove her worth. She doesn't fight for clarity that should have been given. She doesn't break down every time someone misreads her boundaries. And for some men, that's terrifying, because control was never about dominance. It was about access, emotional access, energetic access, psychological access. Now they no longer have it, and that's when the projection begins. Jung warned us that when people don't face their own shadow, they will project it onto others. The dangerous woman becomes the canvas. Suddenly she is too much or too cold. She's changed. She's intimidating. But none of this is about her. It's about what she no longer mirrors. She no longer reflects the validation they crave. She no longer plays the role of emotional caretaker. She no longer holds space for manipulation disguised as love. And in doing so, she becomes a mirror too sharp to look into. Men who are still ruled by unintegrated shadows will either try to break her or romanticize her. The first group will try to put her back in her place. They'll test her boundaries, push her buttons, guilt her for growing, call her difficult, accuse her of being bitter. They don't realize she's not playing the same game anymore. She's not waiting to be understood. She's walking forward with or without their permission. The second group will put her on a pedestal, the divine feminine, the goddess, the muse. And at first, this may feel like reverence, but even idealization is a form of projection. They fall in love with the image, not the woman. And when her humanness emerges, when she doesn't save them, doesn't soften their wounds, doesn't explain away their unhealed patterns, they pull back. Because she wasn't a goddess, she was real. And real requires responsibility. This woman, the one who's done explaining, doesn't need either role. She's not here to be worshipped or fixed. She's not interested in being your mirror. She's her own source now. Her energy is not extracted, it's chosen. And that's why her presence feels powerful. Jung believed that the path to wholeness required confrontation with the unconscious. And there's something about a woman like this that triggers that confrontation. She will not be your shadow container. She will not carry your wounds for you. She will not play the part of savior or victim. And that's when something rare happens. You either rise to meet her or fall away. But let's be clear, this woman did not become dangerous overnight. She became dangerous through fire, through disillusionment, through letting go of versions of love that cost her too much. She didn't arrive at this place easily. She earned it. She knows the taste of disappointment so well, it no longer shocks her. She's walked away from people she once begged to stay. She's cried in silence, swallowed pride, sat in rooms full of noise and still felt alone. But she turned all of it into fuel, not for anger, but for awareness. Her silence is not emptiness. It's full of everything she used to explain. She used to break herself into pieces, hoping someone would pick one and call it enough. She used to water herself down so no one would drown in her depth. She used to confuse being understood with being loved. But no more. Now, her love is sacred. It's not offered out of fear. It's not given to feel worthy. It's not transactional. It's clean, intentional, rare. She doesn't chase. She attracts. She doesn't prove. She chooses. She doesn't explain. She exists fully, and that's enough. This shift in energy is felt. It's the reason people get nervous around her without knowing why. She doesn't do anything. She simply no longer needs to. The most dangerous woman is the one who sees clearly and still chooses to walk alone rather than stay in something that costs her clarity. Because clarity is her currency now. Clarity of energy, clarity of direction, clarity of boundaries, clarity of truth. She doesn't hate men. She doesn't fear love. She simply refuses to engage in dynamics that demand her silence as a condition for belonging. And the man who's done his own work, who has met his own shadow, who doesn't need her to be small so he can feel big, he will recognize her, not just as a woman to love, but as a mirror for his own evolution. Because that's what she is now. Not a fantasy, not a fixer, not a reward, but a reminder. A reminder of what's possible when a woman reclaims herself, when she burns the mask, when she stops apologizing, when she stops explaining. She doesn't need to shout. Her presence is loud enough. And that is what makes her dangerous. She no longer walks into a room wondering who will like her. She walks in already knowing she likes herself. And that changes everything. The woman who's done explaining herself no longer lives for reaction. She lives in alignment. She doesn't seek approval. She listens for resonance. She doesn't chase connection. She attracts reflection. And the people who once needed her to be small simply can't reach her anymore. She didn't disappear. She just became so inwardly anchored that surface-level attention feels like noise. She's not cold, she's clear. And clarity is magnetic, but only to those who are ready to see without illusion. Carl Jung believed that individuation, the full unfolding of the self, requires us to leave behind the false layers we've been taught to identify with. This woman has done that. She's peeled away the roles, the guilt, the performance, the pleasing. What's left is someone deeply rooted in who she is and uninterested in who she's expected to be. She no longer softens her truth so others can feel comfortable. She no longer hides her power to protect fragile egos. She no longer translates her soul just to be understood. And this is why her life looks different now. There are fewer people, but deeper bonds. There is more solitude, but never loneliness. There is more silence, but also more meaning. She has lost many things, but she has gained herself. This woman no longer confuses chaos with passion. She doesn't call anxiety love. She doesn't mistake instability for intensity. She knows that peace is not boring. It's earned, and she would rather be alone in truth than together in illusion. That's what makes her powerful, her capacity to choose herself again and again, no matter what it costs. Because she knows that the cost of abandoning herself is far greater. People often wonder why men seem unsettled around her. The answer is simple. She's not afraid of being misunderstood. She no longer adapts to soothe their insecurity. She no longer fills in the emotional gaps. She no longer overfunctions so they can underfunction. She simply is. And being in her presence, really being in it, demands authenticity. It demands that you meet yourself before you try to meet her. This is why she's not for everyone. Not because she's difficult, but because she requires depth. The man who can walk beside her is not the one who needs her light to feel whole. It's the one who's walked through his own darkness and no longer fears hers. The one who doesn't need her to be less so he can feel more. The one who sees her not as a project or a fantasy or a conquest, but as a mirror. Because this kind of woman will show you who you are. She'll reflect your wounds. She'll challenge your patterns. She'll invite your truth. And if you're not ready, it will feel like too much. But if you are, it will feel like home. Being loved by a woman who no longer explains herself is not comfortable. It's not about convenience or control. It's about co-creation. It's about respect without demand. It's about presence without pressure. It's about love that doesn't need to perform. She's no longer looking for someone to complete her. She's looking for someone who can meet her, someone who understands that silence can be sacred. That space doesn't mean absence. That no isn't rejection, it's honesty. That intimacy isn't constant contact, it's truth shared without fear. She no longer wants the man who promises the world. She wants the one who builds truth in small, steady ways, who doesn't get defensive when she speaks, who doesn't retreat when she cries, who doesn't shrink when she shines, because she will shine. Not for attention, not for validation, but because she's no longer dimming her light to survive in dark places. She's not asking for much, just everything real. And when she loves without distortion, without games, without performance. But she also loves with discernment. She's learned that not everyone who reaches for her deserves her, that not everyone who says, "I love you," means "I see you," that not every connection is meant to last, and that's okay. She doesn't hold on out of fear anymore. She lets go when it's time, not out of bitterness, but out of respect for herself and the other. And she no longer grieves endings the same way, because every time she lost something not meant for her, she found more of herself. So yes, she is dangerous, but only to those who benefit from her confusion, to those who expect her to explain her boundaries, to those who mistake access for entitlement, to those who call her too much because they never learned to hold anything real. To everyone else, she is liberation. To the women watching her rise, she is a reminder that it's possible to live without apology. To the men willing to meet her as equals, she is a partner in awakening. To the world built on her silence, she is the sound of change. And to herself, she is finally enough. No explanation needed.